which is a story. This drives me to what I want to discuss today, which is on technological speculations for African oral storytelling, looking at the implications of creating expressive, embodied conversational agents. I am from the Technical University of Kenya, and my supervisors are Professor Odoj Pido and Dr. Donna Pido. My name is Melissa Achoko Alela, as has been mentioned. So first I look at orature, or what exactly is meant by oral storytelling. And two definitions have been put forward, which I feel really articulate the issue regarding recording oral storytelling really well. So one is by Pio Zimiru, who is credited to have coined this term. He says that orature is a use of utterance as an aesthetic means of expression that is meant to be verbally and to be communally performed. The other is by renowned writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who adds on to this by mentioning issues on gestures, song, dance, processions, storytelling, proverbs, to mention but a few. So when we look at oral storytelling from this perspective, we can begin to see the issue when it is recorded in linear media or in text format. That is, it's highly performative and it's highly participatory. And the moment you record this in a video or write this in text, then you lose all this aspect of orality. So thinking about it in that way led us to begin thinking about how can we then record this, and that is more like the digitization of oral storytelling. And there are two approaches to this which can work together. One is using interactive storytelling systems, and the other is to enhance or visualize this using conversational storytelling agents. So interactive storytelling systems were of appeal, great appeal to myself as an artist, as an animator. One, because they merge animation, game design, and also film within one particular production, and they also allow for varying degrees of story autonomy. This is an issue in ICS where you ask the question, to what extent can the user actually influence the narrative outcome? So interactive storytelling systems can allow that level of agency for the user. And then there's the ability for contextualized authoring of verbal and non-verbal content regarding the story. So the verbal would actually be linked to related verbal gestures that enhance the storytelling experience. And then using agents will simply give it a face, give it a human appearance within who will represent the actual storyteller. So in this case, we have like a virtual storyteller in the system. But when we use an agent, then there's a need to have expressive gestures that mimic what an actual oral storyteller has. So once we had sort of began narrowing the focus of the study, there was a need to identify one piece of text that would use as a research example in this case. And Song of Lawino, which was authored in the late 60s by renowned Ugandan writer Okopi Bitek, became an ideal example to use. This was because of a number of reasons. The first is when Okopi Bitek authored this piece of text, initially it was in his native Acholi language. Acholi is one of the languages spoken in Uganda. He was really concerned with Acholi aesthetics, as these are related traditional songs. And song in this sense is not really referring to musicality, more on the performative aspects that were included in what he wrote. And then the other is when the text was translated to English, so from Word Palawino to the English version that we now know as Song of Lawino, it maintained all of the Acholi imagery and rhetorical devices that existed in the original text. The last thing is, when this piece was written as text, it's a highly performative piece. It's orally conscious as well. It lost all the aspects of expression or a performance that are existent in an actual live storytelling session. So this is on issues on kinesics, for example, the facial expressions, the gestures, dance as well, that would be present in a live performative context. And also issues on proxemics, the space in which a storyteller users with their storytelling experience. So this was the literary text that we're going to use for this example, or work of orature that would be relevant for in this case. So the direction of the work began to become more focused and was going towards the direction of embodied conversational agents. These are 3D recreations of characters that have an additional level of interactive storytelling systems and therefore able to narrate stories, read information. They have like a multimodal system embedded in them, so they're able to also read information from the user and integrate that into a storytelling experience. Now, ECAs are of great interest and have been used in so many contexts. They've been used in training scenarios, they've been used for education and entertainment, they've been used more particularly, for example, in health education. They've been used quite extensively in health education. And of relevance to me particularly is they've been used to populate virtual worlds. A good example is work done by Chandler and his team, where they look at the creation of a virtual Pompeii. So this is more in the area of virtual heritage creation, and they try to imagine what the inhabitants of Pompeii may have looked like and how they may have interacted with one another. So these virtual agents were used to populate the virtual heritage site, so it's not just empty without people, but it is replete with people. And then another interesting example where ECAs have been used is in literary works. There's one great example from the university, from Liverpool, James Moore University, where they tried to recreate a Scottish poet and use the face that was created to narrate the poems that he wrote. So this one of the 5 main areas that we identified where ECAs have been used and more or less propelled us in this direction of using conversational agents. When creating these agents, there are a number of issues that are of great concern. One is on the issue of social acceptance, that is the level of believability of these characters. And this supports for meaningful interaction of the artifact. The artifact in this case is the character that has been created, the agent system. And what we discovered was the number of ways that this can be mediated, this can be achieved. So the level of believability is directly linked to the visual appearance of the character, the speech of the character, and also the gestures that the character uses to communicate. The other is on how the user engages with the ECA. Does the user perceive the agent to be a partner in authoring the story, or it's simply an artifact that gives them information? And then the last is on the need of using culturally appropriate bodily expressions and behaviors that are reflective of the culture that the agent is meant to represent. So we were also keen, because now the study was beginning to get more focused towards having relevant gestures. I looked into existing corpora of gestures that exist, and many of them are from what I refer to as weird societies, that is Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratized. And many of these gestures are not really relevant to the context of African oral storytelling. They have some really useful gestures that can be used, but not all of them are relevant for this context. So there's also extensive literature on African gesture, but most of it is not documented in a manner that can be used, for example, in a motion capture manner that can be used for ECAs. What was coming out of this was an obvious design challenge, which was the need to extend this existing corpora, what exists from what is referred to from the weird societies, the data sets that come from other institutions, to extend this with culturally tailored interventions using bodily expressive ECAs. My problem statement is well articulated by this quote from the book The Way of the Storyteller by Ruth Sawyer, and she says that there is a kind of a death that happens to every story when it leaves the speaker and becomes impaled for all times on a clay tablet or in the written form. To take it from the page to put it again into living substance, that is the challenge. So from this, I'm picking up 3 things with regard to the issue of oral storytelling. One is that it's based on the spoken language. The other is it comes to life only through social interactions. And the last is it cannot be adequately reproduced in written formats or via linear media. We lose all the aspects of performance that are existent when we capture it in linear media. So my statement is then, how can the indigenous dramas of Africa outside of the Western tradition inform the digital mediation to retell the works of African orature that maintain the unique elements of drama, performance, and narrative that are characteristic to oral storytelling? I have one main overarching research question, which is how can works of African orature, such as Song of Lawino, be mediated in digital formats that relay the unique elements of performance and narrative in oral storytelling? That was quick, okay. So these are my research aims. I'll just quickly brush over to the rest of the slides, the fourfold. But the main thing stemming from this is the need to create a multimodal data set that represents these gestures, and then to use an iterative design process to develop, prototype, and field test the digital recreation of the oral storytelling experience, or a research example, in this case, Song of Lawino. So this is a process we do in animation, which is use a mood board to inspire the visual appearance of a character. And this is addressing the issue of realism of the character without really going into the uncanny valley, where characters begin to look less appealing and we get terrified from them because they're too hyper-realistic. So at the moment, the character, this is how she looks like, the virtual storytelling agent. So we focused on her appearance and also issues on facial expression, and this is based on Paul Ekman's work regarding the facial expressions that represent different emotions. The dialogue system at the moment is based on IBM Watson Service, which also has a few limitations, particularly with regard to having authentic sounding voice, but it works really well for the interactive storytelling system. The technical framework starts with recording gestures, then creating a model that predicts the interactions that ensue as a result of using these gestures. The technical framework or implementation is represented as such. So there are many levels to this. The whole interaction happens in a VR scene, and from the storyteller's end, the output is based on data sets of pre-recorded oral narratives. Also, text-to-speech is one approach that we explored. However, text-to-speech wasn't working so well because it's not very authentic sounding. So then the non-verbal behavior generation, this is addressing issues on back-channeling and gestures used for this interaction. And the storyteller on this end is able to understand the story audience based on the speech input coming in from the audience and also the multimodal gestures, the gestures from the audience's end. And lastly, there'll be a last stage for analysis. My data sources are coming from a couple of, I have two main data sources. One is from live observations at events. So I have attended a few storytelling events in Nairobi. And the other is analyzing videos that are available in the public domain. So analyzing videos looking at the posture of the storyteller, the gaze behavior of the storyteller, and back-channeling characteristics or behaviors that we can analyze, and also gestures in this context. And the ensuing data set will look at the role of the storyteller, the role of the secondary storyteller, because in most cases it's not just one storyteller, but there is a secondary storyteller. Also looking at the proxemic interaction with the audience and the expressive bodily gestures, the non-verbal behavior, the other performative elements that are prevalent in the storytelling experience, and also the interaction between the audience and the storyteller. We have also looked into a number of implications for this. So the work is still at a very early stage, and moving forward we'll be looking at the issues on performance, the interaction, and the authorial intent. How much does the audience affect how the story narrative flows? This is, before we go into coding the information that we have, this is a table that we're using at the moment to break what has been recorded into different chunks. So, for example, when we looked at some of the videos that we got from public domain, it became obvious that the communicative goals could be classified into categories of introducing like a general impression, describing a specific event, or filling in gaps when there's no dialogue, and also describing a specific event. So this will be further populated. And just about to end. We're also looking at implications for, our time is up. Can I have a minute, please? Yes, just 1 minute. All right, so the main implications is on investigating the relationship between the performance. This is more like for the model for the ECA. So looking at the relationship between the performance of the storyteller's multimodal gestures, the verbal and non-verbal features that are extracted from the storytelling scenario. And also here we're looking at the creating appropriate non-verbal behaviors, and also the prediction of the storyteller's intent, what the storyteller is trying to say with her gestures. My contributions are twofold at the moment. I feel they can be classified into both technical and conceptual. So technically, there's going to be this new multimodal corpus or corpora of African storytelling performance gestures. And the other is more conceptual. This is looking into the digitalization of cultural heritage works. So more like oral storytelling, think about that as a work of intangible cultural heritage, and looking at how they can be recorded using emerging technologies. Yes, so I really would look forward to and would welcome feedback on any aspect of this work. It's still pretty much at the early stages, and there's room for enhancing it further. Thank you.